I want to introduce the topic of time pressure, because time pressure is the very thing that defines a project, right?
Yeah.
Deliver a product or service by X date, right? If we didn't have the time constraint in project management, we wouldn't have project management. We would have operations.
Right.
So the thing with time pressure, though, it is one of the central causes of cognitive biases. Time pressure introduces automatic thinking, and automatic thinking introduces more cognitive biases.
So it changes how we think more than, for example, resource pressure. Time is a resource.
It increases your likelihood that you're going to use a shortcut.
Yes.
So biases are a part of a heuristic system that increase the speed at which you think and the speed at which you respond. So when you're in automatic thinking, you're on your essentially like galactic light speed, you know? You're trying to go as fast as you can with your thinking, and so when you're using the biases and you're bringing in more and more of them, you're really just trying to get from here to the next universe as quickly as possible and then back again.
So recognizing that people's demand to show that they're competent and they're under time pressure, two different things that they're faced with, that's really just putting pressure on these biases. Or are you seeing some specific ways to handle time pressure?
In many cases, it is what's causing many of the biases, or it's acting as a moderator to increase the significance of the bias itself.
Well, specifically, anytime you have a manager who says what we've heard multiple times, we don't have time for that. Instantly, if somebody tells you we don't have time for that, you're like, you hone in and you try to zero in on the quickest answer or quickest decision you possibly can make in that moment. All of a sudden, anything that in your own mind may be superfluous or may be extra, you instantly start taking away and start calibrating to the time pressure that manager just placed in the system.
Are you suggesting that we should never have that time pressure affect our thinking in a project?
So when we're looking at time pressure and we're looking at it from like a motivation perspective, if we could ladder it and say, okay, here's like no time pressure typically means that, you know, I'm basically just going to go at it. When if I get it done, I get it done. It's not a big deal. But if you're up on the other end of the ladder at, say, a 10, then at a 10, you're going to be under so much time pressure that you're likely to freeze, not be able to take on all of the information that you need, or that you're going to make an increase in errors, is what the research indicates. However, if we can keep that time pressure in the middle zone between that 4 to 6 range, then we have enough pressure to motivate us, but not so much pressure that it essentially paralyzes us.
So from a project management perspective, what is the hack? What should we do about this?
So we know time pressure changes the way the brain operates, okay? Yeah. I think the key is knowing where time pressure is the most impactful. That's the hack, right? So anything to do with prediction is a bad area to have time pressure.
Okay, so don't compress our planning time.
Right. So and here's another thing. We need to start focusing away from saying the word planning and forecasting, because those generally involve processes. We need to think in terms of the word prediction. Anything that has to do with looking ahead. So anything to do with prediction is a bad place for time pressure, because you're thinking about risk, you're thinking about obstacles, you're thinking about all the different scenarios of things that could go wrong. You're breaking down tasks into smaller pieces, right? Like the WBS and activities. And so the brain doesn't process very well when you're trying to rush through that and you're blowing past all essentially the phase gates that would cause you to stop and think and expand and mold and break down, right?
So that's the time to allow thinking to flourish more. Or, and then there could be that exception. And well, this really could fork here on this decision. And then what are some more obstacles to that?
So here's the other hack, right? When you think about a major proposal where you spend 3 months preparing for a multi-million-dollar project, there are many, many steps between, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to package it. The one piece, that one sliver of time, which is probably 0.0001% of that entire 3-month period, is actually the part where you'll be doing the predicting. The other parts of that are, hey, let's figure out what the scope is. Did we get all the paperwork together, all the computers installed? There's all these other pieces that everyone's stressing about to package it, make the project right, make it pretty. But the actual part of prediction may only be an hour or two in the war room talking about the durations or the resources associated with that scope. So why would you take that 0.0001% of the entire package proposal over a 3-month period and say, let's rush it, when that prediction in that 1 or 2 hours is going to mean the difference between whether that milestone is 25% off or 5% off? So that's where you focus on, where do I reduce the time pressure and where do I put the time pressure back up?
So let's talk a little bit about the dual system theory, the Kahneman system 1, system 2, slow and fast thinking. How is that playing out for you, and do you see that as an area to continue to work in, or is that an underlying framework for you as you're looking at how project managers need to interact with predictability and execution?
It is a very integral underlying foundation to all of this. So system 2 is essentially thinking slower, more deliberately, right? It's thinking through a process or a thought that you're going through, right? System 1 is fast, automatic. And because in a project we're under time pressure, we tend to default to automatic thinking or system 1 more often than in an operations environment.
So that was underlying everything we've been talking about here.
Yes, system 1 is underlying everything that we're talking
when we're in
about
predictability
here.
and using system 1, your point is we're going to have bad predictability.
Our predictability will go down. I have a hypothesis that by default of the time constraint, projects are making worse decisions than operations. If you look at heuristic thinking, automatic thinking, thinking using cognitive biases, even if it's 10% more because of the time pressure, we're making 10% less quality decisions than under a less time-pressured environment.
Well, that's problematic because the definition of project management is that it's a temporary endeavor, progressively elaborated under time constraint.
Yes.
So given that we have to be under a time constraint, it sounds like what you're pushing for is more a study and awareness and personal awareness that that's what's going on.
I think the awareness is the skill part, right?
Okay.
But we also have the process, right? Sometimes if we're following processes and we have redesigned processes to account for time pressure, now we can start to mitigate it through that as well. And then recognizing the hack of where the time pressure should be lower and where the time pressure can be higher.